Iran has basically pulled the pin on the Houthis and said that, yeah, well, this is not one we can win, we're pulling out. And they've even ordered all their people to leave Yemen because this is not winnable anymore. We're back in the Gunners Club one more time.
You're here with Gunner, of course, with Seuss, and trouble brewing in the Middle East.
Is there what? Here's my question for you. Do you think that there's going to be an outright and all-out war between the US and Iran?
See, I think the last time we saw a proper all-out war in the Middle East was Egypt against Israel.
Oh, yeah. Not just Egypt, though. That was Egypt, Syria,
That's right.
Jordan. I mean, they all came in and all got their asses whooped.
They did, but I think after that date, really what we tend to see is wars by proxy.
Yes.
Which is pretty much what we're seeing at the moment with the Houthis.
Houthis.
And their support as well from Iran. You see, it seems to me there's a lot of proxy fights going on. On one side, you've got the ideological differences between Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And then also Iran. And then we haven't even begun to mention Israel as to how they factor into that as well.
Yeah, but, I mean, look at the last couple of days. The Houthis are basically getting their asses wiped at the moment as a result of, them continuing to attack
and
merchant
piracy
shipping.
on the ships, yeah.
Yeah. And America basically, I mean, look, up until now they've been, tit for tat type of stuff, they hit one of ours, we'll hit one of theirs, and, I think the America has basically sort of said now, we've sort of had enough of this game. The game's over, son. And they're going in and they're basically taking out, whatever we can find is gone. And apparently the latest news we've just been watching, Iran has basically pulled the pin on the Houthis and said that, yeah, well, this is not one we can win, we're pulling out. And they've even ordered all their people to leave Yemen because this is not winnable anymore.
Yeah, they certainly don't want to be seen in name to support what's going on there.
Correct.
In Yemen. But my thoughts are is that the paradigm has been really for the last 40, 50 years for wars or skirmishes or battles, incursions and even overturning of countries like Syria, recently with the Turkish forces. They're proxy fights. There are other countries which are allowed to do the work or to do the bidding. It seems that there's a little bit more than just mopping up that needs to be done at the moment. It's very interesting because if you think about America at the moment, shying away from the concept of globalization, starting to hem in its borders, starting to redefine what North America is, i.e. it's not NAFTA, it's United States, i.e. they don't even belong geographically to the area around the Gulf of Mexico, that's the Gulf of America. Ratcheting up the tariffs, turning their back on things like the World Trade Federation.
The UN.
And NATO as well. However, now we're talking about geo-defence, and it seems that they're actually sending, I believe, another carrier group across with access to the Middle East. Now, I understand, Seuss, that they do use an island which is off the coast of Africa, south of India, Diego Garcia.
Correct. And they've just moved 30%. Because America possesses, I think, 20 or 21 of the B-2 bombers. So, and they're usually always stationed on...
carriers?
No, the B-2s are stationed in continental US, right? And they've moved 7 of them. So 30% of their B-2 force, which is staggeringly huge for them to put it all in one place.
In a strong message to the Houthis and Iran, the US has deployed 6 B-2 bombers in the Indian Ocean island of Diego Garcia. This is 30% of its stealth bomber fleet. Amid its relentless strikes on the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen,
as well as, I think it's 5 or 7 airborne tankers. Now, Diego Garcia, from a B-2 bomber's standpoint, is only a spit away from the Persian Gulf.
In late March 2025, the war zone reported a significant buildup of US aircraft at the British military base on Diego Garcia, a remote British island base in the Indian Ocean.
So not only, there's a carrier group already in the Red Sea. They're another carrier group
Is moving in,
is
yes.
steaming there and is arriving imminently. They're moving 7 B-2 bombers into Diego Garcia. I think that's trying to send a message. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think I'd be getting that message.
It's interesting because a lot of the action at the moment is being done through unmanned drones. We know that they've lost some of those.
Yeah. The Reaper drones, that's correct. They've
That's
lost
right.
another one just the other day or today.
And then there's been some attacks as well through light bombers. It really hasn't been the heavy stuff like the B-2s. But it's similar to that episode of Yes, Prime Minister, where the Prime Minister orders in a reinforcement of Navy, and he's asked, a reinforcement of what, Prime Minister? To which he retorts, a reinforcement of goodwill.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the same policy is in the Middle East. It's one where you fight as much as you can through proxy, and you try not to use, I guess, too much of an iron fist, or if you do, you try to at least make sure it's in a velvet glove, so you're not causing too much skirmish.
I think that was the policy, as you say, of the last, 50 years. However, I don't think anyone's taken the Trump factor into consideration. I think he's taken the velvet glove off, in my opinion.
It becomes very volatile when you have a clash of ideologies which define who a people are rather than what their purpose is. Now, if you have a look at these political parties and these zealot groups, they identify themselves by names which have a direct connection with God. And what that means when it comes from diplomacy for something like that, it's not possible. It's not possible to have any diplomacy or discourse with a fanatic.
No,
Because they will not relent and they will not see logic.
You only
And
have
whether
to
they
think of
exist or not-
Hamas when you think about that. You only have to think of them.
Yeah.
What sort of a people would indoctrinate their children from birth that it's a good idea to die as a martyr? I mean, is that even ideologically sound?
I mean, it's certainly not ethical. But I remember you, as a child, you saying to your mother that what you wanted to do for a living was to be the person who stands at the front of the ship and goes, boom, 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 boom. It's not 100 miles different, only in that you didn't actually have an understanding of what the target would be, who you'd be fighting, or what the cause of it would be. You simply wanted to be a liberator
Yep.
or a young man.
Ah,
What do I see happening? Look, it's very interesting that America at the moment, when they're so, I guess, obsessed with their own domestic politics, that they're actually outwardly projecting force in that area, an area which is not consequential to them for trade, really. The Red Sea is not of utmost importance to them. I guess you
no,
could
but
say,
the Gulf is. It most certainly is. And the Houthis are, well, they're blocking that trade.
look, you'll always get petroleum moving backwards and forwards. And for America, I guess they are basically self-sufficient when it comes to petroleum.
To that
in fact,
they are, yes.
they're actually a net exporter in that
Correct.
regard, which is sort of surprising, something we wouldn't have expected 20 years ago.
No,
by any
no,
means
no,
at all.
no. And I think they're going to be even more so because he's opening the pipelines again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to say, really, what I think the purpose of what you're saying is, how much of the dynamics of everything changing under Trump would somebody else have dared to do something like this? I guess probably Reagan would have dared to do something like this.
You know
But
what?
we haven't seen-
I agree.
Yeah.
I think so. But even he would not have been so outwardly bold and in your face with it. Reagan was more of a politician.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Yep. However, Trump, the way he is, he's perceived to be, you don't know which way he's going to move from 1 minute to the next.
Oh, yeah, he's volatile and capricious.
Yeah. But he's right in your face, and you know when he tells you something, you better listen, otherwise shit's going to happen.
But I'll tell you what the problem is with that. The seismic landscape has changed. There's fractures under the earth. Now, he's having a trade war with the EU that's
Yep.
got 450 million citizens. America's only got, 350, I think, or so. So it's down on that. He's having a trade war against China with anywhere between 800 million to 1.4 billion, depending on which satellite images of lights you choose to believe. It's probably a little bit less than what we're being told that it is. He's having a different trade bloc and trade isolation from BRICS, which is a much more populous and in terms of volume of trade, even higher group than the US. So although he still sees himself as the dominant projector of power, and you could say in terms of Navy ships he's not, in terms of naval power he certainly is, it won't be that way forever. So what that means is having to change the way that you do politics. It shouldn't be about extension of military might. It should be about having proper diplomatic relationships with people who invest in the same ideals. Now, we're going back to a video that we've just done on the trade and the tariffs and the betrayal, really, I would say, to all of the Anglophile nations of Earth. I think that's something he's failing to do. How much longer can he continue to do that, Seuss? Well, how much longer?
Do you believe that it would be in the world's best interest to allow Iran to become a nuclear weapon-empowered nation?
Well, they would never identify themselves as that. Of course, it's only for production of power.
Oh, yeah, but
although the centrifuges will spin and spin and spin, and we know that we'll have weapons-grade uranium.
And they know that we know that that's bullshit.
You had the Americans arming one faction against the Russians.
Yeah, Mujahideen, that was, yeah.
That's right.
Hang on, but that wasn't the Taliban. Okay, that wasn't the Taliban, that was the Mujahideen. Although they did sort of evolve into the Taliban at a later date. But never mind.
So, politically, I guess, really for America, who is my friend? It's my friend of convenience for that moment.
Yep.
One well-known example came in 2013. An Iranian attempt to intercept a US MQ-1 Predator drone over the Gulf ended with 2 American F-22 Raptors shadowing the intercepting Iranian F-4 Phantoms. The Raptors reportedly flew beneath the Iranian jets undetected for a time, before one casually pulled up alongside and radioed a warning, "You really ought to go home." The Iranians never knew they were there until the Americans made their presence known. That incident illustrated both the stealth superiority of the US Air Force and the glaring technological gap that Iran faces.
And then there's an old Middle Eastern saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That's right.
And I think never truer words were said. In terms of naval deployment, look, if you've got a navy, you're going to want to deploy them to where they could be needed in any case, because, well, it just means moving them across to that ocean from here to there. They're there anyway. They're already on.
I do love Trump's small faux pas on television, and I haven't seen it replayed again since, but he said, look, I would much rather see diplomacy, I would much rather see agreement, I would much rather see us coming to, a diplomatic resolution. Although, if that doesn't happen, then, there's the other. And he was pressed on the issues. What do you mean, the other? He says, well, we have to justify our $1.3 trillion military budget somehow. You can't answer it better than that.
That's true. And I guess the sword has got a blunt edge.
Yeah.
And a sharp edge as well.
Yeah.
It's sort of similar to what you see in the talons of the American eagle as well on the flag, isn't it?
That's true, isn't it? That's true.
Will we ever see peace in that region in our lifetime?
Oh,
look, I really don't think so. As long as people identify themselves by who they're not, I don't think that'll ever be the case.
No time in the history of mankind has there ever been peace when religion was involved. And I'm talking from either side, any side, doesn't matter what your chosen deity happens to be. If you're that strong a believer in something, you can't have peace because somebody will believe in something else. However, in this case, I think Iran has finally decided that they will negotiate through a third party because, for domestic reasons, they can't be seen to be negotiating directly with the devil. So...
yeah, it's all about saving face, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So there is a possibility that there might be an agreement. However, if I was Iran, I don't think I would want to bet against Trump not kicking my ass if I don't come to an agreement.
Yeah, it's certainly a region where it's probably hard for an Australian or an American to understand, but it's a region where we've seen a lot of bloodshed.
Oh my God,
where
yeah.
we've seen,
Since history began.
But even with the recent example of Syria, a fallen nation, the seizing of the capital.
Yes.
And it's something which can quite easily happen.
But, I mean, it's not just the fact that Syria fell, it's the fact that it has completely changed the game, because Iran had that buffer zone of Syria there as a protection against incursion by foreign nations there for them.
It's not only that, it's also the thing of if you've got a little brother who's up to all sorts of dickery, the attention is off you. So, for example, China can decide to be a bit errant at times and do what it wants to do.
Yep.
It's its own nation. But it's always good to have North Korea sort of piddling in the paddle pool and getting its ear cuffed occasionally. It takes the heat off you to some extent, doesn't it?
Yes. That's right.
Yeah, and they're always good to give a little bit of a liver shot as well in the ring.
Just when he turns around, right. Just a quick one.
Folks, we're just having a beer in the pub talking about high politics, but if you like what you see, subscribe, join us, throw us a like, we'll see you again.
And for more good stuff like this, we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.